Exposing the incredible secret of a janitor, one unexpected gesture left the CEO speechless. Jack pushed the mop across the sleek, polished floor, each stroke a silent reminder of his place in this opulent Silicon Valley tech firm. His faded uniform, a ghost that faded into the backdrop of high-powered executives clad in tailored suits, was a stark contrast to the all-consuming hubbub of innovation surrounding him. The conversations he overheard about groundbreaking software and revolutionary algorithms were intoxicating, but they also left a bitter taste of invisibility. He yearned to be part of that world, yet the easy disdain in their chuckles echoed in his mind. What could a janitor know about technology? His upbringing echoed in the walls around him. Raised in a cramped apartment under the tireless care of his grandmother, who juggled a medley of jobs just to keep food on the table, Jack learned early on the value of hard work. With every shift he clocked in, he absorbed wisdom, late-night coding tutorials feeding his passion like a secret dream tucked safely away until the next wave of doubt crashed over him. That dream felt more like a fading echo as he mopped up another spill in the gleaming conference room, a mundane task that dulled the spark of ambition still smoldering inside him. He hesitated as the executives entered, their laughter slicing through the air with an imperceptible edge. What would they think of him if they knew about his late-night escapades with code? Would they laugh? Dismiss him as just another cog in the machine? The thought gnawed at him. He was a ghost in their world, unseen and unvalued. Today was particularly heavy, a storm rumbled outside, mirroring the turmoil inside him. After one of the executives flung a coffee cup across the table, the caffeine stain spreading over the project notes felt like a metaphor for Jack's own nightmares. As he cleaned, something in the back of his mind nagged like an itch he couldn't scratch. He spotted a flaw, a critical error in the software design that could act like a ticking time bomb for the company's upcoming deal. Pulse quickening, he drafted what seemed like a lifeline, a suggestion for the team regarding the flaw. The more he thought about it, the more it felt like he had stumbled upon a chance to make a difference. He found himself in the meeting room, listening as Claire, the ambitious CEO with ice in her eyes, brushed him aside. Laughter filled the room at his meek attempt to contribute, a reminder of his status, the invisible worker in the shadows. But then came Earl, the elderly groundskeeper who shared more than just gardening tips. His tales of standing against oppression inspired Jack, igniting something deep within. "Don't let them silence you, kid," Earl had said, fingers trembling as he recounted how he once defied authority. Jack replayed those words in his head, gripping the mop tighter as tension knotted in his stomach. The urgency of the boardroom discussions crescendoed, the looming threat of losing a major client due to the flaw was palpable. Could he really stay silent when he knew how to help? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Eyes narrowing, Jack's heart raced. He felt like an outsider on the brink of revelation. Drawing in a deep breath, he stepped into the boardroom, uninvited yet determined. The clamor faded as every head turned towards him, incredulity flickering in their expressions. His mouth felt dry, thoughts collided within him, a storm of uncertainty and hope. This was his moment. This could change everything. With Claire's steely gaze bearing down on him, Jack prepared to speak, unearthing all the doubts he had carried. Would they laugh again? Would they let him speak? The tension throbbed, a live wire, as he met her eyes steady and fierce. Would they finally see him? Or would he be swallowed again by silence? As her mouth opened to respond, a blaring alarm erupted from the conference room next door, drowning the room in chaos. Panic surged as the shrill alarm sliced through the air, drowning out conversations and spilling over into the collective anxiety of the conference room. Jack felt the weight of indecision crushing him. Inside, the storm that had been brewing for years now boiled over. This wasn't just about the flaw or the software, it was about him, about finally breaking through the barriers that had kept him invisible. Claire's initially irritated expression transformed into one of calculated command as she raised her hand, beckoning for silence. But Jack didn't need the chaos to encourage him. As the executives shifted in their seats, murmurs of confusion filled the space, and he grasped a tether of courage within. If this was his moment, he would seize it, no matter the consequences. "Excuse me." He blurted out, voice wavering but rising above the din. Every set of eyes swung toward him once more, scrutinizing and skeptical, but Jack willed away the momentary impulse to retreat. There's a flaw in the latest software update, one that could cost the company significant losses. If you don't fix it. Another laugh erupted, deeper this time, a chorus of disbelief mixed with derision. He swayed under its weight, but thoughts of Earl's words anchored him, "Don't let them silence you." He pressed on, urgency spilling from his lips. "I've seen how it works. I've been studying it at night. There's a critical error that needs addressing immediately. Let me explain." Dread replaced his initial thrill. Was self-advocacy worth risking further ridicule? Yet one glance at Claire, her eyes narrowing in contemplation rather than scorn, sparked a flicker of hope. Jack took a step forward, gaining momentum amidst the unsettling atmosphere. "There are 3 conditions where the algorithm fails if we don't act now. The client could pull out," he articulated, hearing a tinge of desperation in his own voice, yet fueled by determination. Formulating a clear, concise explanation, he laid out the vulnerabilities he had identified. As he spoke, the initial disbelief on their faces began to shift into curiosity, his own passion for coding surfacing through every explanation. With each technical detail shared, Jack felt the walls of invisibility breaking down. The executives exchanged glances, faces morphing from amusement to concern. He noticed Claire leaning forward, her attention squarely on him. Suddenly, the world around him expanded, and he was no longer just the janitor but a conduit for critical information. But as the room quieted, a chill crept in. What if they accepted his insights, only to turn away, still seeing him as the cleaner? Would his newfound visibility only last as long as his usefulness? He wrestled with that thought, even as he continued presenting his points, layering them with logic and urgency. Finally, as he closed his explanation, a heavy silence settled. Jack's heart raced, the anticipation suffocating. Would Claire dismiss him like before, or would this lead to something greater? "You say you've studied the system," Claire began, her tone icy yet intriguing. "How do you propose we fix it?" Jack's pulse quickened. Was she genuinely asking for his input? This moment was critical, an apex in his life where he could either capitulate to fears or step bravely into the uncharted territory of his aspirations. Haltingly, he gathered his thoughts, fully aware that the next words might change everything for him both as a cleaner and an aspiring coder. "Let me show you." His voice sharpened with newfound clarity as he prepared, both mentally and emotionally, to support his claims. And beneath the surface, a deeper realization began dawning. This wasn't just a professional crossroads. It was a personal reckoning, one that would push him to confront who he truly was capable of becoming. Jack knew this was just the beginning, not merely a choice but a defining moment. As the confusion began subsiding, Jack felt the tentative grip of potential gaining strength. And yet, as he took a breath, a bone-chilling doubt lingered. What if revealing his skills invited backlash, both personally and professionally? The air hummed with expectancy as Claire gestured for him to continue. What might arise from this unexpected new course? Would he confront the whispering doubts that had haunted him, or would standing exposed under their gaze bring them all crashing back down? The moment was taut with uncertainty, but the time had come, and he inhaled deeply, preparing to break the mold of what he had always been. As Jack launched into a detailed explanation of the solution, adrenaline coursed through his veins. He drew diagrams in the air with his hands, illustrating the algorithm's flaws and their implications for the software's integrity. For the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged, like this room, a space he had often swept clean and walked through unnoticed, was his domain. "Here's the breakdown," he stated, his voice steadier now, infused with passion. By adjusting the parameters on lines 112 through 115 of the code, we can prevent access failures during peak usage. I've mapped out how this modification could fortify our server's response time. The executives leaned forward, some scribbling notes, others whispering to one another. Jack's heart raced not out of fear but exhilaration. He was gaining ground. Claire's expression shifted again, attention shifting from mere interest to active engagement. And what kind of timeline are we looking at for implementing this change? Even as Jack answered, outlining a realistic timeline for testing and deployment, he found himself oscillating between confidence and doubt. Would they really act on his recommendations, or would this moment dissolve into another opportunity lost? He could feel the collective apprehension in the room, the shifts in posture as people's reactions turned from skepticism to contemplation. As he concluded with a summary of the testing protocols, Jack made eye contact with Claire. To his surprise, she remained silent, brow furrowed in thought that blended admiration with scrutiny, and suddenly he wondered, had he crossed a line? In that moment, the stakes felt impossibly high, and he could sense the risk of rejection now loomed larger than ever. Jack, you're suggesting they take your word on this and lead a development team? One of the executives cut in, eyebrows raised, a half-smirk lingering on his lips. No offense, but aren't you a janitor? Jack interrupted, the words spilling out propelled by a blistering mix of indignation and newfound bravery. Yes. But my background doesn't diminish my understanding of the software. I've spent years observing, learning, and coding on my own. I know what I'm talking about. Silence reigned as the confession hung in the air, shock coloring the room. The executive faltered, clearly unprepared for the retort. Jack's mind raced. Was he burning bridges or paving a new path? This wasn't just about skills but also about legacy, about the identity he had crafted in darkness. If he backed down now, every ounce of courage he had gathered would also vanish, lost to the shadows where he previously existed. Before Claire could speak, he forged on, I understand if you want to deny my contributions based solely on the title I hold. But this isn't about titles, it's about results. I believe I can make this work. Would you consider giving me the opportunity to prove myself? As his own voice seemed to echo off the conference room walls, he felt a shiver of both eagerness and dread ripple through him. The die had been cast, he had put everything on the line, and now he had to brace for the outcome. Claire's gaze held him captive, and he saw something flicker in her expression. Was it respect, or perhaps doubt? She glanced toward her colleagues, who were reorienting themselves, shifting from disbelief to something akin to intrigue. It was a turning point. Listen, I think there's merit to what you're saying, Claire finally said, her tone heavy with consideration. However, we need to discuss this further before proceeding with any changes. There are protocols, and Jack's heart sank as the weight of her words began to sink in. Protocols, approvals. The corporate game hadn't vanished after all. But he quickly forced himself back into focus. This was merely a hurdle, a challenge to what he hoped would be a leap forward. As the meeting wrapped up, Jack found himself at the precipice of the next step, the unsettling uncertainty tugging at him again. Was this moment a triumph or just another misstep? Would he shrink back into invisibility or step into the unforgiving spotlight of responsibility? In the days to follow, Jack knew he would need to chase down this fledgling opportunity with the same fervor he had cultivated in the dark of night. But lingering in the back of his mind was the draft of impending failure, a specter he had fought against his whole life. That evening as he left the building, the cool air swept across his face, awakening a resolve deep within him. The biggest challenge lay ahead. Would he muster the courage to lead an initiative, to directly confront those who would doubt him anew? The night held promise, but also fear. The journey to prove himself had just begun, and in the depths of his ambition, he realized this battle was less about technology and more about self-acceptance. He could no longer ignore the truth. He had to decide who Jack truly wanted to be. And as he clenched his fists, he whispered a vow to himself. This time, he wouldn't back down. The stakes were too high. But just as he turned the corner onto his street, the weight of the day settled heavily around him. At that moment, a thought pierced through the fog of uncertainty. What if the price of stepping up was too steep, and what if this leap would finally shatter his fragile ambition? The following morning arrived, heavy with the residue of last night's confessions and unresolved turmoil. Jack awoke, the blanket of doubt wrapped tightly around him like a second skin. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the bare walls adorned only with a few remnants of existence, a forgotten poster and a calendar filled with crossed-off days. Today was not just another day off the calendar, it was the day he would step forward in the corporate world that had long felt out of reach. As he dressed, his reflection challenged him from the mirror. This was no longer about the hygiene cart and mops, it was about asserting his place in a realm overshadowed by misconceptions. With each button he fastened on his shirt, he felt an unfamiliar sense of commitment, not just to the job but to the man he envisioned becoming. No more lurking behind the edges of the boardroom, today, he would act. He navigated the office hallway, each footfall echoing with purpose. The usual hum of activity filled the air, but for Jack, it felt different, charged. The sight of familiar faces who had overlooked him in the past now fueled his determination. He spent years preparing for this moment, absorbing unspoken lessons through casual interactions and overheard conversations. At his desk, he opened his laptop and began assembling the notes he had hastily scribbled during the meeting. The pulse of innovation surged within him as he crafted a proposal that laid out his vision, strategies, and projected outcomes of the changes he had advocated for. This was not merely about fixing code, it was about stripping away the doubts that clung rigidly to his identity and replacing them with a tangible reality of competence. Claire appeared at his doorway, her brow creased in thought, and Jack's heart raced in response. "Hey, I was looking for you," she said, her voice steady yet casual. "We need to have a discussion about the proposal." Jack managed to steel his voice despite the rapid beating of his heart. "I have some ideas prepared. I think I can outline how we could move forward effectively." "Good. Meet me in the conference room in 15 minutes. She nodded, but there was a brief moment when her eyes narrowed, as if gauging his readiness. It hit him this was not merely a meeting, it was a trial, an evaluation of the authenticity he had projected. The head of product development joined them as they assembled in the conference room, his presence a looming pressure. Jack threw himself into the presentation, guiding them through the critical points with an unwavering clarity that surprised even himself. When questions arose, he answered fluidly, mixing technical know-how with strategic foresight. With every query posed to him, he found himself digging deeper, channeling that adrenaline from the meeting days before. It was exhilarating, but the room also pulsated with a palpable tension. Doubts lingered in the air, but he confronted them head-on, reframing setbacks as resolutions rather than mere complications. The pivotal moment arrived when Claire interjected with critiques. Instead of faltering, Jack adapted, showcasing not just his knowledge but his willingness to transform and refine his approach. It resonated with everyone present, and the energy in the room morphed from skepticism to the spark of possibility. After the discussion, Claire studied him with a new regard. "I didn't expect this level of insight from you, Jack. It's clear you've got a unique perspective, and frankly, we could use that." "Thank you," he replied, feeling the heat of accomplishment warm his chest, but he hesitated, aware of the shadows cast by past perception. "I hope I've just begun to prove that I'm more than my title suggests." As the meeting ended, Jack stepped into the hallway, a tension releasing itself from his chest for the first time in ages. The battle he fought with his self-worth didn't vanish, but it shifted. He had turned a corner not just in his role within the company but in acknowledgement of his worthiness apart from the title he carried. Yet as he walked away, the pervasive thought that fueled his anxiety returned: what if climbing this mountain only led him deeper into vulnerability? What if success opened doors to challenges he wasn't yet prepared to face? The next few weeks would be a rare test. Jack understood that this was only the beginning. Could he sustain this momentum and rise above the whispers of doubt that still echoed in his mind? Only time would tell, but one thing was clear: he needed to prepare for the scrutiny that would come with any leap forward. And as the dim office lights flickered around him, a new question surged forth in his thinking: what unforeseen obstacles would emerge now that he was crafting a new identity, and could he hold tight to his convictions amid a brewing storm? The following days blurred into a cycle of excitement and anxiety as Jack navigated this new landscape. Every meeting felt like a tightrope walk, where one misstep could throw him back into the shadows. He meticulously reviewed his notes each night, poring over his proposals and responses, convinced that a single word could tip the scales of perception. He needed to be flawless. In discussions with colleagues, he actively sought feedback. Night after night, he would sit at his kitchen table, a whiteboard filled with diagrams and concepts, the triggers of anxiety manifested as he scrawled ideas and solutions. Jack transformed his personal space into a war room for his burgeoning professional persona. He found himself strategizing, questioning every angle of his approach, eager to gain confidence in his ideas. Claire's acknowledgement lingered in the back of his mind as both an encouragement and a weight. Each time he encountered her in the halls, he caught glimpses of admiration but felt the added scrutiny. It was palpable, a tangible pulse sending shivers of self-doubt coursing through him. He wanted to maintain that momentum, to secure a place in the conversation that mattered, yet he feared the consequences of any miscalculation. One afternoon, as he leaned against the glass railing of the atrium, observing the city skyline, a thought ignited. This was not just about proving himself, it was about leveraging the perspectives he had developed during his years on the periphery. His past experience as a janitor allowed him to see problems others overlooked. Could he embrace the unconventional insights that formed uniquely through his journey? With renewed resolve, Jack sought inspiration in the everyday workings of the company. He took notes on interdepartmental dynamics, observing interactions that others seemed to miss. This was not merely research, it was reconnaissance. In conversations with staff from various departments, he began to curate their inputs, gathering real-world anecdotes that could add depth to his proposals. His next project focused on proposing streamlined communication methods between teams. As he compiled his findings, he found himself typing furiously, his ideas pouring forth with newfound clarity. Each paragraph solidified his conviction that he held a vital key to organizational cohesion, a key that had been crafted not in boardroom meetings but in the trenches of the everyday grind. However, everything changed during a casual lunch with Claire. As they sat at a bustling cafe, surrounded by chatter and laughter, she voiced a concern that unsettled him. "I notice your enthusiasm, Jack, but sometimes being too invested can work against you. Don't lose sight of your limitations. You can't expect to change the company's core overnight, especially if they've never noticed you before." Her words slipped into him like a cold drop of rain on a warm day. He nodded in agreement but felt a storm brewing inside. Was she hinting at a truth he was too afraid to confront? What if the weight of expectation turned against him? Could his ambition distort the very essence of who he was? The subsequent days turned his mind into a battlefield, where old fears clashed with newfound ambition. He began waking up in the twilight hours, pacing his small apartment, wrestling with the duality of his aspirations. Each dawn felt like a promise, yet one false step could lead him back to the shadows. Then, an unexpected meeting was scheduled, an all-hands gathering to discuss potential departmental shifts. Jack's pulse quickened as he understood the implications. Discussions would happen about performance reviews and possible promotions. The stakes were higher than ever. Would he fade into obscurity again, or could he finally find his voice among higher echelons? As he prepared to share his findings, fueled by the urgency of the moment, a potent question emerged from the chaos of his thoughts. What if he was not just capable of shining in the spotlight but also destined to thrive on its very edge? Could he endure the trials to come without losing the authenticity that had shaped him? The day's end approached, and as he walked through the office that evening, an unsettling realization settled into his chest. The outcome of the meeting might not just affect his career trajectory, but perhaps expose the deeper fractures within him. Shadows lingered behind every corner, and he knew this next moment would define more than just his professional journey, it might shake the foundations of his identity. The stakes had never felt so high. As he reached for the light switch, Jack's heart raced, anticipation mingling with dread. He was about to step into an arena that could either elevate him or strip away the carefully constructed facade. What transformation awaited him once he stepped into that room? Would he emerge reborn, or fractured? The room buzzed with energy, a collective anticipation hanging in the air as Jack entered. A long table dominated the space, its surface strewn with reports and digital devices, the hum of conversation briefly warming the chill of his trepidation. He pronounced his presence, a steadying breath stretching into the gravity of the moment. Tight clusters of employees formed around him, each face a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, and he wondered whether his journey would resonate here among faces he barely knew. Jack fervently reminded himself of Claire's comments as he settled into his seat. Limitations, he whispered internally, the word echoing like a warning bell. Yet fighting against that notion was an equally potent reminder. His unique perspective could be the catalyst that sparked change. As he looked around, he weighed how he'd spent countless nights strategizing, reconstructing his thoughts into something both passionate and relevant. This meeting could be his stage, a platform to render his experiences not just useful but transformative. When the CEO entered, the air shifted. Conversations faded into a subtle backdrop as all eyes gravitated toward the front. The leader's commanding presence was undeniable. Jack felt the surge of admiration from his colleagues, a blend of aspiration and intimidation. This was the very figure whose approval he sought and yet cowered beneath. Amidst the nods and appreciative murmurs surrounding him, his inner voice screamed for him to save the company from stagnation. He felt he owed it to his journey and to himself. The CEO cleared his throat, signaling the intended agenda. Today, we're looking at innovative ways to elevate our communications, breaking down silos, he announced, setting the stage for idealistic discussions. Jack's heart raced. His proposal hovered just beneath the surface of his thoughts, ready to pierce the bubble of doubt enveloping him. As colleagues presented their ideas, Jack held on to the belief that difference emerged from authenticity. Each speaker hit the same notes, incremental changes wrapped in corporate jargon. They were valuable points, certainly, but where was the urgency? Where was the raw memory of cleaning supplies and midnight shifts that had taught him about the fragility of connection? Then, it was his turn. As Jack stood to speak, a palpable shift quieted the room. He drew upon his years of experience, the imperfections and overlooked moments, and wove them into a narrative that bridged the divide between hierarchy and the everyday worker. With each word, each story about individuals needing validation, feelings neglected in a sea of metrics, he painted a picture of a workplace that thrived on genuine interaction rather than calculated efficiency. Imagine a communication system that feels as dynamic as our work culture, he urged, his voice rising. A platform where everyone from janitors to executives can share their insights, without fear of being silenced or marginalized. Let us create an environment that thrives on suggesting ideas rather than merely maintaining status quo. His heart raced, the finality of his delivery met with silence as the room absorbed his passion. He exhaled, feeling vulnerability spill beyond the restraint of his once consumed thoughts. It was exhilarating and terrifying, a rite of passage illuminating the stark contrast between his past and what he envisioned. Then came the tremor of anxiety. What if he had veered too far? Would his leap of authenticity solidify his place, or would it expose insecurities? As he stepped down, the tension withdrew gradually from the air, murmurs blossoming into a mix of understanding and contemplation. Jack felt the weight of his ambition build against the tide of collective judgment. Hope flickered in the exchange of glances. And then an unexpected gesture, a nod from the CEO, the faintest smile dancing upon his lips. The man had been struck by something deeper, perhaps even the spirit of teamwork that Jack had drawn from his very core. But as he sat down, a gnawing doubt clutched at him. Was this just the beginning of a path laid with uncertain outcomes? His confidence steadied, yet he was haunted by the fear of overstepping boundaries either born of tradition or status. The meeting concluded, yet Jack felt far from resolved. As he gathered his things, a tension laced with optimism flared. What consequences awaited him now that he had exposed his truth? He could sense that an undeniable shift had begun, but had he ignited the very change he sought, or merely opened Pandora's box? The moment of transformation was coming, but what shape would it take? Would his voice finally resonate within these walls, or would it unravel everything he built so far? As he stepped out into the hallway, heart thundering, he knew the next call, pivotal and haunting, was drawing near. Jack's thoughts swirled like the autumn leaves caught in the wind as he stepped into the dimly lit corridor. The echo of his proposal reverberated in his mind, drowning out the chattering voices still resonating within the meeting room. Had he really just opened a gateway to change? Or was he simply a fool, blindly pushing against the tide? As he leaned against the cool metal of the wall, he felt the weight of uncertainty settle on his shoulders. The nod from the CEO flickered in his memory like a candle fighting against the darkness, but could it possibly hold the promise he craved? He pondered the implications of his words. Were they truly revolutionary, or merely a fleeting spark in a rigid system? Jack suddenly realized that the only person capable of determining the outcome was himself. Gaining a bit of composure, Jack retreated to the nearest break room, seeking solace in familiarity. The scent of coffee still lingered, a warm reminder of countless shared breaks with colleagues. Yet today, it felt different, dangerous, even as if he was standing on the precipice of profound change. As he poured a cup, memories of late-night brainstorming sessions resurfaced. He recalled an incident years back when a janitor named Joe had shared a brilliant idea about a more efficient waste disposal process. Jack had been struck by Joe's unexpected insight, recognizing the value lying hidden among those often overlooked. Jack had always believed that every voice mattered, yet here he was, wrestling with the fear of making waves himself. The metallic sound of footsteps broke his reverie. It was Sarah, a fellow team member, who entered the break room with a glint of curiosity in her eyes. "Hey, Jack. You really took a bold stand back there," she said, her voice light but edged with sincerity. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Jack hesitated. Was he ready for this conversation? Would she recognize his vulnerability, or merely see a haphazard businessman trying to climb the ranks? "Thanks, Sarah. I just felt it was time to push for something real," he replied, crossing his arms defensively, tapping into a semblance of confidence. "Real? You mean more like personal? You shared your journey. It resonated with all of us, especially the parts that hit home." Jack felt his heart quicken again, grappling with the realization that his authenticity could indeed stir something profound. Her words would either bolster his resolve or lay bare his deepest insecurities. "Do you think it's enough to create real change?" Jack asked, nervously toying with the handle of his coffee cup. Sarah tilted her head slightly, as if weighing her thoughts. "Change doesn't come from perfection, it comes from being honest about where we are and daring to challenge what we accept. You did exactly that." Her response held a soothing weight, yet Jack couldn't shake the pang of responsibility accompanying it. "But what if it blows up in my face? What if this is a massive mistake?" His uncertainty cloaked the conversation like a dense fog. "Then you keep pushing forward. You may feel like an outsider now, but you've ignited something in us. And that's worth the risk." The challenge in her words resounded, igniting a flicker of determination within Jack. Could he truly embrace this new path? He wanted to be the catalyst, not just passively observe the changes around him. Perhaps this moment needed to transcend discomfort, maybe it was the very catalyst he'd been seeking. Just as he felt the swell of conviction begin to rise, an urgent buzz vibrated in his pocket. Pulling out his phone, Jack found an email notification from the CEO, a request for a follow-up meeting to discuss the ideas he had proposed. The anxiety that had settled in the pit of his stomach ratcheted up another notch. What was this? A chance to elaborate or a summons to justify his audacity? "Are you okay?" Sarah inquired, observing Jack's sudden shift in demeanor. His mind raced, wavering between dread and exhilaration. "I have to meet with him again," Jack replied, swallowing hard as anxiety clawed at him. If this meeting could lead where he envisioned, what would it demand of him? Could vulnerability blossom into leadership, or would he simply be inviting scrutiny? Jack felt buoyed by Sarah's earlier encouragement. He turned, placing his empty mug in the sink, the decision crystallizing within him like ice solidifying in winter. He would prepare. He would confront both his fear and his aspiration. As he stepped back toward the hall, his pulse quickened with a mix of dread and triumph. A deep breath materialized within him. Jack knew he needed to discover exactly what lay beyond the next door. The door to his future was opening, but would he be ready to walk through? Jack surveyed his reflection in the polished surface of the meeting room door. The adrenaline coursing through him could easily be mistaken for confidence, yet deep down, it felt more like a premonition. Flashes of doubt crackled in his mind as he prepared to face the CEO again. The authority looming on the other side wasn't just a title, it represented a world that thrived on conformity, a world that might recoil at Jack's push for change. Taking a steadying breath, he opened the door. The room inside buzzed with muted conversations and the soft clinking of typing. Jack's heart raced as he stepped forward, every stride weighted by the gravity of what had just unfolded. He was about to present ideas rooted in authenticity, a concept foreign in a corporate framework. The CEO, tall and imposing, sat at the head of the table, a focused look etched on his face as he scanned the room. Jack fought the urge to shrink back at the sight of his scrutinizing look. Instead, he planted his feet firmly, refusing to allow self-doubt to drag him down. This time, he was not there to hide behind polished presentations or safe answers. "Jack, I appreciate your insights during the last meeting. Let us delve deeper into your proposals," the CEO began, gesturing for Jack to take the floor. Jack felt a mix of urgency and excitement surge within him, propelling him forward. He launched into his ideas, passion infusing each word. He spoke about innovation, collaboration, and the vital need for diverse voices in their strategies. The initial skepticism on the CEO's face shifted to intrigue, and it felt empowering. But challenges bubbled under the surface. Would the CEO, buried in traditional corporate logic, truly get behind something that threatened the status quo? Fire ignited in Jack's thoughts, aligning with Sarah's encouragement. He conjured Joe's story, the janitor whose simple words had sparked a transformation once before. "Every idea counts," Jack pressed, making eye contact with his peers, drawing them in. "Imagine harnessing the potential of insights that might come from unexpected places. We must embrace this approach, or risk stagnation." He noticed a few furrowed brows, a wave of uncertainty circulating among coworkers. Could he grasp that collective hesitation to birth a new momentum? He took a step back in his delivery, shifting gears to address their concerns. "I understand the fear of stepping away from what is familiar, but envisioning a new future requires courage. It's not just a proposal, it's a call to rethink how we operate as a team." As Jack continued, the energy in the room shifted, palpable with curiosity. Even the CEO's demeanor softened as he acknowledged Jack's points with nods. Yet, intertwined with hope was the ever-looming fear of failure. Jack's mind turned inward, wrestling with the notion that every step forward could lead to a cliff. Drawing strength from the moment, Jack resolved to confront that fear head-on. He decided to embrace vulnerability rather than mask it. "I, too, have felt the weight of questioning my path," he admitted. "But perhaps transparency about our own uncertainties could encourage others to step forward with their ideas, fostering an environment where failure is just another step toward success." The CEO's gaze sharpened, and Jack sensed an electric shift in the room. Words fell from his mouth like hailstones, each cadenced beat embodying both risk and strength. It felt pivotal. But, just as he began to sense the tide turning, the CEO leaned forward, a serious expression taking root. "Do you truly believe this approach will work? This isn't merely an idealistic view, we need tangible outcomes for investment in your vision." Jack's stomach dropped, but somewhere in that weight, an unexpected clarity crystallized within him. This was the intricacy of real leadership, the ability to weave personal belief into a framework that others could grasp. In the face of a challenge that felt monumental, he acknowledged a key truth: beyond the walls of a rigid corporate identity lay an uncharted territory filled with potential. The moment had come to face off with the skepticism, the true test of his resolve. We can demonstrate success through pilot programs promoting engagement across various layers of the organization. Show that innovation isn't just a top-down directive, it's woven into the daily fabric of our team. Jack declared, the exuberance of this newfound clarity vibrating in the air. As the CEO opened his mouth to respond, Jack felt the stakes shift one last time. Here lay the crux upon which everything rested, the culmination of his risk, his journey toward authenticity. The swirling doubts, the fleeting moments of triumph, all condensed into a singular defining moment. But, as the echo of his words faded, a sudden weight fell heavy in the silence that ensued. Would they be enough to dismantle the preconceptions that held them captive? The question lingered in the air, leaving Jack breathless, longing for affirmation yet fully aware of the void surrounding him. And just as the atmosphere thickened with tension, a news alert flashed across the CEO's phone, diverting attention from that pivotal moment. Jack's heart raced. What could this new distraction mean for his future? Strip away the facade of professionalism, and the true test awaited just beyond the surface, the urgency to learn who would rise or falter in a turning tide. The CEO's gaze flicked away from Jack as he scrolled through the alert, his brows knitting together. Jack felt the room's breath collectively hold in a moment of paralyzed anticipation. The discussion, so precariously poised on the edge of transformation, now veered into chaos, the narrative thread he had so painstakingly woven unraveling before his eyes. Doubt rose in Jack's chest, raw and undeniable. Was he just another voice lost in the noise? The profound connection he had felt moments earlier receded like a tide, leaving him in a vast expanse of self-reflection. The stakes were undeniable, his desire to innovate now stood against the weight of corporate inertia, against a tide of skepticism that threatened to pull him under. The CEO focused intently on his phone, lips pressed in a thin line. Jack took a moment to collect himself, mind racing with the implications of that silence. What did the news alert entail? Would it reinforce the path to progress or further entrench the status quo? The uncertainty gnawed at him, rendering his previous confidence a shallow facade. He needed to reclaim momentum, to harness the energy of that pivotal moment before it fully dissipated. I understand that external factors can feel overwhelming, he began, voice steady but charged with urgency. But change doesn't come from waiting for the perfect moment, it requires us to act, to step into uncertainty bravely. The CEO's eyes hesitated on Jack for a brief instant, a flicker of intrigue crossing his features, but the tension in the air had shifted. Co-workers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to navigate this unexpected detour. Jack sensed this, the flickering doubt in their eyes echoing his own turmoil. He needed a strategy, a way to cement his ideas amidst the disarray. What he had learned through his journey was that authentic leadership involved cultivating an environment where others felt empowered to share their ideas, regardless of hierarchy. Let us be candid about our anxieties surrounding innovation. If we embrace a culture where questioning the status quo is encouraged, we can transform obstacles into opportunities, he laid bare, synthesizing his own vulnerabilities with that of the collective group. But then, a voice cut through the tension. Margot, his peer and someone who had constantly reminded him of the risks associated with challenge. Jack, while your ideas are commendable, aren't you being overly optimistic? Her voice was clipped, sharp with practicality. Pilot programs are fine in theory, but how do we ensure they deliver results amid our current obligations? Jack felt the sting of her words, they were necessary yet harsh, forcing him to confront the foundation of his ambition. I think we start small, he replied, choosing vulnerability over defensiveness. Let us identify a single department where we can experiment with this strategy, gather feedback, and measure outcomes. We'll refine as we go. We can't leap into change without a careful plan, but we must take a step forward to start moving. The CEO, finally looking up from his device, regarded Jack with an intense interest. Your point about starting small is valid, he intoned, a new note of consideration coloring his voice. But who will champion this initiative? Who will ensure that the pilot sees commitment, accountability, and above all, results? Jack's pulse quickened, feeling the weight of the room's gaze upon him. Here was a chance, a task to fulfill beyond mere words, a test of personal resolve. "I will lead the pilot," he stated, demanding conviction in his own voice. "And I will build a team committed to this vision. Let's create champions at every level of our organization." The moment hung electric in the air. This could be the inflection point that altered his trajectory. Yet, lurking beneath the surface, a gnawing fear nagged at him. Was he truly ready for this monumental challenge? Margot leaned in, her skepticism not yet dissolved. "But Jack, if it fails," he interjected, "then we learn, we adapt, and we try again. Learning is not failure, it is a step toward success. The only risk is not starting at all." The CEO nodded slowly. "Very well, Jack. You have your shot, but it will require unwavering commitment." With that, a fresh wave of determination washed over Jack. This was an opportunity, not just for him but for the entire organization. Yet as excitement surged, doubt remained nestled in the back of his thoughts. Could he truly lead an initiative, balancing ambition with the weight of responsibility? Just as the tension was starting to lift, another distraction emerged, a colleague bursting through the door with urgent news. "You won't believe what just happened in the warehouse." The tension began coiling anew, leaving Jack on the precipice of an unforeseen setback. What revelation awaited that would shake the foundation of their corporate intentions? As the colleague stepped into the room, frantic with excitement, Jack braced himself for another potential derailment. All the momentum he had gained felt precarious. His voice now hung in the balance alongside the weight of unasked questions that loomed over the atmosphere. "There's a major issue with our suppliers. They've halted shipments. We might face disruptions in our new product launch." The words hit Jack like a bolt, sending ripples of concern through the room. Clarity surged within Jack, amplifying his resolve. The urgency of the situation illuminated the necessity of his proposed approach. If their innovation strategy was to withstand the existing challenges, champions at every level were critically essential. Instead of succumbing to the chaos, Jack seized the opportunity to demonstrate leadership. "If our standard operations face disruption, then we need to be prepared for the unexpected," he declared, a newfound authority resonating in his voice. "This pilot not just about our internal dynamics, but it's about how we manage crisis, anticipate client needs, and foster teamwork to navigate obstructions collaboratively." The room quieted as Jack spoke, every eye now fixed on him, his vision reformulating beyond the paperwork he initially drafted. "Let us gather a cross-functional team today to create a response plan for this shortage. Together, we can brainstorm alternative strategies for production and delivery." He sensed the empowerment surging within the group, realizing that this time, they were not just passive observers. Every input counts. "Let us ensure our teams feel supported and heard." The CEO leaned forward, a spark igniting in his expression. "I like the enthusiasm, Jack. This isn't the first time we've encountered issues of this nature, but perhaps it's time we approach them differently. If you lead this effort, I will back you up," he affirmed, solidifying the foundation of trust Jack had worked tirelessly to establish. An electrifying warmth filled Jack's chest. He felt that long-buried aspiration bubbling to the surface. The time for hesitation was gone. His actions would ultimately define who he was beyond the title of janitor. In this swirling storm of uncertainty, he was ready to be at the helm of the response effort, his vision ignited by the lessons of adversity. "Let us reconvene in an hour," he proposed. "We can set a rough timeline for discussing contingencies and communicating with stakeholders." As they all filed out, the energy shifted once again. Reinvigorated, Jack felt an unfamiliar empowerment guiding his steps. The hesitations that once rooted him in fear began to dissipate as he absorbed the reality of transformation. In those next 60 minutes, Jack mentored his group with the confidence he never knew resided within him. The collective problem-solving story that unfolded in the conference room was buoyed by perspectives that, just days previous, he could only dream of seeing valued. As they discussed strategies, he ensured to recognize every contributor, reiterating their insights, and fostering a true sense of collaboration. Ideas emerged like a vibrant tapestry, weaving executive strategies into operational realities. Days turned into weeks as Jack and his assembled team tackled various challenges arising from the supply issue. Each meeting solidified Jack's place not just as a janitor but as a respected voice in the company's growth narrative. The walls of invisibility crumbled with every successful resolution, and by the time negotiations with new suppliers concluded, Jack's assurance and understanding of the industry became undeniable. Finally, the pilot program launched, not merely in response to potential setbacks but as an ongoing commitment to an expansive culture of accountability and collaboration, one that proved everyone could contribute, irrespective of initial titles. Among the weeks of feedback and iterations, Jack received formal recognition from the CEO during an all-hands meeting. His contributions hailed not just for managing the crisis effectively but for inspiring a shift in culture. As applause filled the room, Jack stood, absorbing the affirmation that washed over him. In that celebratory moment, he reflected on where he had begun. The once invisible janitor was now stewarding change. His journey wasn't solely about ascending the corporate ladder, but about infusing the very organization with something transformative. Jack understood what it meant to embrace his identity past the limitations once imposed, epitomizing resilience and competence. He had achieved more than just success, he had woven the threads of his story into the rich fabric of the company. With a newfound clarity, Jack sat in another boardroom meeting, his presence recognized and valued, no longer the unseen figure in the background. As discussions moved onward, he knew there would always be challenges ahead, but he lived the truth. He had found his voice, a beacon of authenticity in a world that had once felt insurmountable. And somewhere in his heart, Jack understood that each step forward was not a solitary victory but a shared experience, one that illuminated the promise for himself and for others who dared to transcend defined expectations. This is your moment of transformation. Embrace your journey, as he has, and ignite your own path towards greatness. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and make a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need encouragement to overcome their own challenges. Don't wait even one more second to support true personal overcoming stories.